Hi, welcome to Purpose Driven Church for Unificationists. We are continuing our chapter on designing a seeker sensitive service. This is a really exciting chapter. I hope you're getting a lot out of it. We're just going to continue on the section we were reading on brightening up the environment. Rick Warren says he goes on to talk about one problem with maintaining the church environment is that after a certain point, you stop noticing the problems. He says, one of the problems faced in maintaining the church environment is that you tend to overlook defects after about 4 weeks. It's a pretty short time. Once you become familiar with a building, you stop noticing what's wrong with it. You become oblivious to the faded paint, the frayed carpet, the chipped pulpit, the outdated rack of tracts in the vestibule, the old bulletins left inside hymnals, the stack of music on the piano, the burned out light bulbs overhead. Unfortunately, these things stand out immediately to visitors who notice details. One way to combat this tendency is to do an environmental impact report on your church. Get a photographer to walk around your facilities and take pictures from the eyes of a visitor. Environmental factors that you need to pay close attention to include lighting, sound, seating, space, temperature, plants, nurseries, and restrooms. So I think this is really cool because, coming in sort of as visitors when we arrived here 3 years ago, we noticed so many different issues like the worn out doors and the faded paints and some of the external lights didn't work. And the bathrooms were in awful condition. And it was really kind of interesting just to have that experience and to recognize that other people didn't notice. Or there were people who noticed, but they didn't really want to do anything about it. So we were kind of coming in as visitors, and many people thought, well, everything looks fine. It's like we kind of had this attitude that, not even noticing but not looking from the eyes of the visitor either. Like, what are they going to notice? How are they going to feel when they come to the church? Because they might notice certain things. They might notice the bathroom's really gross, but they're not going to say anything. They just won't come back because they have such a bad feeling. And I think that we hope that we can make up for that with our truth and with our fellowship. And that would be really nice, but I don't know. So first topic he covers is lighting. He says lighting has a profound effect on people's moods. Inadequate lighting dampens the spirit of a service. Shadows across a speaker's face reduce the impact of any message. He says most churches are too dark. And he says maybe it's conditioning from like the Dark Ages or something like that, when we just didn't have a whole lot of lighting, or maybe certain type of monasteries or whatever like to keep a low lighting because they feel like it's more spiritual. But he says that I believe that church buildings should be bright and full of light. God's character is expressed in light. He says if you want to wake up your services, brighten up your environment. Take the curtains off your windows. Throw open the doors and windows. Turn on all the lights. He says sound. Invest in the best sound system you can afford. If you're trying to cut costs, do it in some other area. Don't skimp here. Saddleback grew for 15 years without our own building, but we've always had a state-of-the-art sound system. He says it doesn't matter how persuasive the message is if people can't hear it in a pleasing manner. A tinny, fuzzy sound system can undermine the most gifted musician and incapacitate the most profound preacher. Seating. Both the comfort and arrangement of your seating dramatically affects the mood of any service. If you can get away with replacing the pews, I'd advise it. In today's culture, the only places people are forced to sit in benches are in church and in the cheap bleacher section at ball games. People expect to have their own individual chairs. It's encouraging to your people when additional chair. He talks about how, if you're starting new, it's better to always set up fewer chairs than you need, because it's always encouraging to people that, you filled up all the chairs. Oh, we have to bring in more chairs. That's always a good sign. Vice versa, it's very discouraging if in your service you're surrounded by a bunch of empty chairs. It makes, regardless of what other progress you may feel like is happening, you feel like the place is empty. And that's very true. Talking about space, the only rule about space is this: don't have too much or too little. Either extreme will limit your growth. He says it's almost impossible to create a feeling of warmth and intimacy when there are more empty chairs than people. An important growth dynamic is lost when your building is too big for your church. Temperature. As a pastor who has preached for years in unair-conditioned gyms and unheated tents, I say this with the utmost conviction: the temperature can destroy the best planned service in a matter of minutes. When people are too hot or too cold, they stop participating. They mentally check out and start hoping for everything to end quickly. Before the service begins, set the thermostat several degrees cooler than what is comfortable. Cool it down before the crowd gets there. The temperature will rise quite quickly once the service starts. Keeping the temperature on the cool side will keep everyone awake. Now this is kind of an interesting thing because sometimes I'll tried in the past to set a temperature a certain way, but then almost every time somebody will come and change the temperature because it's either too cold for them or too warm for them or something like that. So I have to give some thought to this. I might just have to put like a key code on it or something like that. And then plants, he says, I encourage you to use plants, trees, and greenery as decoration in your facilities. For years, we hauled plants, ferns, small trees in and out of rented facilities each weekend. Plants say at least something is alive in this place. And of course, this kind of keys into people feeling closer to God in nature. And as a side note, he says, be careful not to overdo mystical religious symbols in your facilities. Everyone knows what the cross is, but the unchurched are confused by chalices, crowns, and doves with fire coming out of their tails. It's kind of interesting. That's a good point. And clean, safe nurseries. If you want to reach young families, you've got to have sanitized, safe nurseries. There should be no mop buckets in the corners, and toys should be cleaned each week. And also clean restrooms. Visitors may forget the sermon, but the memory of a foul-smelling restroom lingers on and on and on. You can tell a lot about the morale of a church by checking out the quality of the restrooms. When we were first starting to do our renovations on our bathrooms, it always came back to me in my mind, when you go to a restaurant or a hotel or any kind of public area, you can tell a lot about how much they care about the place and how much they care about their visitors by how clean they keep the restrooms and how nice they are. If the bathrooms are nice, then it just gives a really good feeling. It's kind of one of the more intimate places in the room, in the building. You have to take your clothes off there. You're touching your skin to their appliances, and it's very intimate in that way. And so for myself, if the bathroom is nice, it gives me a good impression on the whole place. Even if the restaurant is kind of mediocre, if the bathroom is nice, I have a better feeling overall. If the bathroom is really grungy, then I really feel like, well, they don't really care about their customers' experience. And I feel like it's the same with the church. And so that's why I really like these really practical points. And tomorrow we'll continue talking about it some more. Thank you.